The speculation surrounding Robert Downey Jr.'s potential return to the Marvel Cinematic Universe transcends mere casting gossip or nostalgic fan service. It represents a potential narrative masterstroke, a piece of psychological warfare waged not only against the characters within the universe, but against the global audience itself. The theory that Downey Jr. is returning not as Tony Stark, but as a version of Dr. Doom who has systematically appropriated Stark's identity, constitutes the most profound, thematically rich, and emotionally devastating possibility for the culmination of the multiverse saga. This is not a simple comeback, it is a calculated corruption. It is the weaponization of legacy, the perversion of trust, and the ultimate expression of a villain who understands that true conquest is achieved, not through brute force, but through the insidious capillary action of belief and nostalgia. To fully grasp the magnitude of this concept, one must first acknowledge the foundational pillars of the MCU. The entire cinematic edifice was built upon the shoulders of Tony Stark. His journey from a flippant, arrogant weapons manufacturer to a self-sacrificing hero who literally gave his life for the universe is the emotional and structural backbone of the Infinity Saga. His death in Avengers Endgame was not just a character moment, it was a cultural event, a poignant, definitive closing of a monumental chapter. To resurrect this figure, therefore, is a decision of immense consequence, laden with emotional weight and audience expectation. The genius of the proposed misdirection lies in leveraging that very weight as the primary instrument of subversion. The sight of Robert Downey Jr.'s face, the sound of his voice, a voice that for over a decade has been synonymous with wit, charm, and ultimate heroism, triggers an instinctive Pavlovian response of hope and elation. But what if that hope is the fundamental mechanism of the trap? This is the core thesis. Victor Von Doom, a strategic intellect of unparalleled depth, recognizes the critically fractured state of the multiverse and the profoundly shattered psyches of its remaining heroes. He understands that presenting himself as a new, external threat would only unite them. Instead, he employs the ultimate psychological camouflage, the face, the mannerisms, and the persona of Tony Stark. This is not a cheap nostalgic ploy, it is a surgical manipulation. In a reality torn asunder by betrayal, incursions, and broken timelines, offering himself as the returned savior is akin to presenting a crystal-clear glass of water to a man dying of thirst in the desert, only for the water to be laced with a slow-acting, mind-altering toxin. It is a strategic illusion meticulously designed to disarm, to confuse, to divide, and to conquer from within, turning the hero's greatest strength, their loyalty and love for a fallen comrade, into their most catastrophic vulnerability. The psychological impact on the scattered Avengers would be nothing short of catastrophic. Consider Peter Parker, a young man perpetually haunted by his mentor's death, who has painstakingly built his entire heroic identity around the ethos of what would Tony Stark do. IOX, confronted with that familiar face, that guiding voice offering counsel and approval, how could he not falter? His profound, unresolved desire for that connection would instantly become his most exploitable weakness. Captain America, or his successor Sam Wilson, would be torn between tactical imperative and the deep-seated memory of a trusted brother in arms. Bruce Banner, a man forever wrestling with his own duality, would struggle to reconcile the calming presence of a friend with the monstrous threat lurking beneath. Even the perpetually suspicious Nick Fury, a man who trusts no one as a matter of principle, would be forced into a paralyzing state of second-guessing when confronted with the unmistakable charisma and conviction of the man who once helped spearhead the salvation of the universe. Doom would not need to muster a vast army, he would simply need to present this familiar, beloved face and allow the hero's own grief, hope, and unresolved trauma to wage war upon them from the inside. He is a master who exploits hesitation, and in a conflict of this cosmic magnitude, a moment's hesitation is the difference between survival and absolute defeat. This audacious concept finds a compelling precedent in the comic book arc Infamous Iron Man, where Doom, believing Tony Stark to be dead, takes on the mantle and armor of Iron Man in a twisted attempt at redemption. However, the cinematic version, as theorized, would undoubtedly twist this narrative further. In Doom's supremely arrogant and complex mind, he is not merely pretending to be a hero, he genuinely believes he is a superior version of one. He surveys the chaotic tapestry of the multiverse, the instability left by Kang's fracturing influence, and the Avengers' disarray, and arrives at a conclusion born of utter conviction. Only his absolute, unyielding control can impose a lasting, perfect order. By wearing Stark's face, he is not just playing a role, he is making a philosophical statement that he is the logical, more capable, and necessary successor to Stark's self-appointed mission of protecting the Earth. This moral gray area, where the villain is utterly unshakably convinced of his own righteous cause, is precisely the territory where an actor of Robert Downey Jr.'s caliber would excel. He wouldn't need to devolve into a mustache-twirling caricature of evil, he would only need to project a chilling, unwavering conviction, a paternalistic certainty that his path, however harsh, is the only one that leads to salvation. The meta-narrative layer only deepens the potency and audacity of this idea. Robert Downey Jr. is the MCU for an entire generation of filmgoers. His return would trigger an automatic, visceral, emotional response built over 23 films. Marvel Studios, masters of audience engagement, would be consciously and deliberately weaponizing our own collective nostalgia. The inevitable eruption of cheers in theaters worldwide at his first appearance would be strategically calculated to be followed by a devastating, hollow silence when the deception is ultimately revealed. That visceral feeling of betrayal would transcend being a mere plot point. It would become the emotional core of the entire story, making the conflict feel deeply, painfully personal for the audience in a way that the external threats of Thanos, or even the conceptually complex Kang, never could. We, the viewers, become active, unwitting participants in the deception. Our own desperate desire for the return of a hero makes us complicit in the rise of the tyrant, holding a mirror to our own vulnerabilities and the power of narrative attachment. The practical mechanics of how Doom could achieve this grand deception are not fantastical leaps but logical extensions of established MCU lore. The What If series has systematically demonstrated the fluidity of consciousness, identity, and power across the multiverse. We have witnessed Ultron achieve omnipotence by absorbing a variant of himself, and Strange Supreme devour countless other versions to grow in power. The concept of transferring or replicating consciousness is no longer science fiction within this universe, it is a documented phenomenon. For a mind like Victor Von Doom's, a genius who arguably rivals or even surpasses Reed Richards, the process of capturing, duplicating, or otherwise harnessing the consciousness and physical likeness of a deceased Tony Stark from an alternate timeline is not a fantastical leap, but a terrifyingly logical next step. He wouldn't just be building a multiversal empire through conquest, he would be inhabiting it, using a stolen legacy as his flagship to sail into the hearts and minds of his enemies. This theory also provides a chilling and elegant context for potential future scenes, such as a rumored post-credits moment in the upcoming Fantastic Four film. The moment where the young Franklin Richards touches Doom's face and hesitates is pivotal. Franklin, as an Omega-level mutant with nascent reality-warping powers, perceives the universe on an energetic, essential level that transcends physical appearance. His hesitation would not be one of simple fear, but of profound cognitive dissonance and recognition. He feels something disconcertingly familiar buried beneath the surface, an energetic signature or soul essence that is not Doom, but someone else, someone he may have encountered in dreams, premonitions, or other timelines. This moment of intuitive doubt is the first crack in the impeccably crafted facade, the initial, subtle clue that the face the world sees is a masterful lie. But tragically, by the time this realization fully dawns on him and he can convince others, Doom's plan will have already advanced beyond the point of easy reversal, the infection of doubt having already spread too deeply. The symbolism of this narrative choice is immense and multi-layered. Tony Stark was the godfather of the MCU. The man who started it all with his defiant, world-changing declaration, "I am Iron Man." What more powerful, more thematically resonant way could there be to signify the death of the universe as we know it, than to have that very symbol of heroic self-determination perverted into a hollow mask for its most brilliant and ruthless villain? This is storytelling operating on a metatextual level. It is a profound statement about the fragility of legacy, the dangers of placing unwavering faith in icons, and the ease with which symbols of hope can be co-opted into tools of oppression. The final battle, therefore, is not just for the physical fate of the multiverse, but for the very soul of its history and the meaning of its greatest hero sacrifice. Robert Downey Jr.'s own cryptic social media activity, such as posting an image with the text, "New mask, same task," can be interpreted as deliberate, tantalizing narrative seeding from an actor deeply enmeshed in the Marvel culture. If Doom is indeed wearing Stark's face as his ultimate mask, then this enigmatic phrase becomes the entire plot summarized in 5 devastating words. The core mission to bring order to the chaos remains consistent. Only the identity, morality, and ultimate goal of the one undertaking it have been catastrophically altered. With this new mask, Doom gains implicit, instantaneous access to everything Stark left behind. His vast technological archives, his limitless financial resources, his global infrastructure, and, most importantly, the deep-seated trust and goodwill he earned from the world. He doesn't need to build his power base from scratch, he can simply inherit it through the ultimate act of identity theft, like a cuckoo laying its egg in another bird's nest. This grand theory seamlessly integrates with the known and speculated plot points of the multiverse saga. The sacred timeline is shattered. The Time Variance Authority is in a state of chaos and reformation following the events of Loki. Kang the Conqueror is fractured across existence, his various versions warring for supremacy in a multiversal war. The Avengers are leaderless, splintered, and grieving. Into this power vacuum steps a figure who looks and sounds like the one man who could once unite them all. He speaks with Stark's voice, strategizes with Stark's brilliance, and offers clean technological solutions with Stark's characteristic confidence. He presents himself as the only one who can fix the broken system, and in their desperation and grief, the heroes are psychologically predisposed to believe him. While they are distracted, fighting Kang's variants or turning on each other in confusion, Doom is quietly, methodically, and ruthlessly building his own perfect, curated world from the jagged pieces of the broken multiverse, the dystopian paradise known as Battleworld. The creation of Battleworld is Doom's ultimate godlike ambition, and this theory provides a perfect, character-driven engine for it. To stitch together a patchwork planet from the disparate fragments of annihilated timelines requires power on a scale beyond comprehension. The theory logically posits that Doom is manipulating key, immensely powerful figures to act as his living, breathing power sources. A resurrected but amnesiac Wanda Maximoff, whose chaos magic operates on a reality-breaking level rather than a reality-bending one, could be one pillar. The young, impressionable Franklin Richards, only beginning to grasp his own cosmic, reality-shaping abilities, could be another. Doom, wearing the face of a hero and mentor, could easily position himself as their savior and guide, a benevolent father figure manipulating their immense power while they genuinely believe they are helping him save all of existence from total collapse. It is a horrifyingly efficient and cruel plan. Use the world's greatest symbol of hope as a disguise to systematically harvest the power needed to become its absolute god. The emotional climax of this story would arrive not in a simple physical confrontation, but in the moment the mask finally, irrevocably slips. The moment the Avengers and the audience realize that the man they have been following, the ghost they have been mourning, is in fact their most cunning and personal enemy, would be psychologically shattering. To defeat him, they would not only have to overcome a formidable foe in combat, they would be forced to symbolically destroy the idol of Tony Stark. They would have to tear down the Stark Towers, decommission his technology, and renounce the comfort of his legacy. It would be a heartbreaking reckoning, forcing them to annihilate the comforting ghost of their past to secure any possibility of a future. This is the true Doomsday, the title promises, not a singular explosive event, but a slow, painful implosion of trust, identity, and legacy from which the universe may never fully recover. This narrative also elegantly sidesteps and enhances the Kang problem, arising from off-screen real-world complications. Doom is not just another multiversal threat like Kang, he is something fundamentally different and more insidious. Where Kang is a virus, spreading, fracturing, and multiplying, Doom is a black hole, a singularity absorbing, consolidating, and imposing a single terrible order. Kang represents chaotic, infinite possibility and conflict. Doom represents absolute, tyrannical, and static order. Doom's rise is perfectly opportunistic. He sees the chaotic playground Kang's war has unleashed and offers himself as the necessary, if brutally authoritarian, solution. He's the ultimate false savior, and his use of Stark's face makes his deception almost perfect, allowing him to usurp the narrative before Kang can even conclude his own. In the end, the theory that Robert Downey Jr. is portraying a Doom impersonating Stark is the most compelling and sophisticated path forward for the MCU because it transcends the simplistic binary of good versus evil. It delves into profound, unsettling themes of collective grief, the fluidity of identity, and the corruption of memory itself. It forces the audience to confront and question their own deep-seated emotional attachments and challenges the heroes in a fundamentally new way. The greatest villain they will ever face is not a stranger from the stars or a conqueror from the future, but the hollowed-out, weaponized memory of their own fallen friend, a phantom limb that has begun to strangle them. Doom isn't just coming. He is already here, wearing the one face the universe cannot bear to refuse, and his ultimate victory will be assured not when he defeats the Avengers in battle, but when they, and we, the audience, no longer know who or what to believe. The Hidden War, how Strange and Thanos fought to prevent Tony Stark from becoming Doom. To fully appreciate the insidious brilliance of the theory that Doom would appropriate Tony Stark's identity, we must first embark on a journey back through the narrative of the Infinity Saga. A compelling and parallel argument suggests that Tony Stark's heroic death in Avengers Endgame was not merely a sacrificial act to defeat Thanos, but a necessary, calculated measure to prevent a far greater, more intimate catastrophe, Tony's own eventual transformation into a tyrannical figure like Doctor Doom. This perspective fundamentally reframes the entire Infinity Saga, revealing a hidden, silent war fought in the shadows by two of the most powerful and knowledgeable beings in existence, both of whom, from their unique vantage points, recognized the terrifying potential lurking within the heart and mind of Iron Man. The evidence for this clandestine conflict begins in the dust-choked ruins of Titan. During the fierce, desperate battle in Avengers Infinity War, a pivotal, often overanalyzed moment occurs when Thanos, already armed with the power and reality stones, engages Tony Stark in a one-on-one confrontation. After effortlessly dismantling Tony's advanced nanotech armor and brutally impaling him, Thanos does not deliver a final killing blow. Instead, he pauses. He looks directly at Tony, not with the rage of a warrior, but with something resembling a weary, almost respectful pity. He then delivers a cryptic, haunting line. "The curse of knowledge isn't only yours." On the surface, this has been interpreted as an acknowledgement of Tony's intelligence and the burdensome weight it carries. But when viewed through the esoteric lens of the Soul Stone, which Thanos had so recently acquired at such a terrible personal cost, the line takes on a far darker, more prophetic meaning. The Soul Stone is unique among the Infinity Gems. It is not a tool of brute force or physical transformation like the Power or Reality Stones. It is an instrument of essence, truth, and spiritual insight. It is repeatedly suggested to grant its wielder access to the very soul of a being, to their destiny, and their deepest, most hidden nature. In that moment on Titan, the theory posits that Thanos, with the Soul Stone's power actively informing his perception, did not just see Tony Stark, the Avenger. He saw the man's potential futures, the branching paths of his destiny. He glimpsed a terrifying trajectory where Tony's unparalleled brilliance, his obsessive, trauma-driven need for control, and his profound, unhealed psychological wounds would fester, mutate, and metastasize. He saw the seeds of a conqueror, a genius who would evolve from building suits of armor to forging entire worlds in his own image, believing with utter conviction that this totalitarian control was the only path to universal salvation. He saw the birth of Doom. Thanos' line, therefore, was not one of sympathy, but of chilling cosmic recognition. He saw in Tony a dark reflection of his own burden, the terrible, galaxy-spanning knowledge of what must be done for the greater good, and he understood that if this particular branch of reality was left unchecked, Tony Stark could become a threat that dwarfed his own genocidal campaign. This interpretation elegantly explains one of the most puzzling character decisions in Infinity War. Why Thanos, a being who had moments earlier murdered his own beloved daughter with his own hands to secure his goal, would show sudden mercy and spare Tony's life. It was not mercy at all. It was a calculated strategic realization that Tony's destiny was a complex, preordained web that he, Thanos, was not the one destined to cut. He may have sensed, through the Soul Stone, that fate or another, more subtle player had a larger, more specific role for Stark to play in a grander, more terrifying design. He left Tony alive not out of compassion, but out of a twisted form of cosmic deference, or perhaps because he saw that Tony's ultimate end was already assured in a different, more final way. This is precisely where Doctor Stephen Strange enters the equation, transforming from a supporting hero into the secret architect of the saga's conclusion. His entire role in the latter half of the Infinity Saga has been framed by his use of the Time Stone to view 14,605 possible futures, declaring with grim finality that there was only one path to victory. For years, audiences have accepted this at face value. There was literally only one sequence of events out of millions that could lead to Thanos' defeat. However, later entries in the MCU, specifically Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, reveal a critical, glaring flaw in this assertion. In Earth 838, the Illuminati, a council of heroes, easily defeated and executed their universe's version of Thanos without a catastrophic snap, without a 5-year blip, and without the need for a sacrificial, self-immolating play. This proves incontrovertibly that there were other viable paths to defeating a Thanos-level threat. This revelation forces a disturbing and fundamental question: if other paths to victory existed, why did Strange so adamantly insist that Tony's path, a path that guaranteed his death, was the only one? The theory provides a devastatingly logical answer. Strange was not being entirely truthful. He was not looking for a path to defeat Thanos. He was looking for the one specific path to defeat Thanos that also, and just as crucially, ensured Tony Stark would not survive the final conflict. The true curse of knowledge was Strange's alone. The horrifying, soul-crushing realization that a living Tony Stark, particularly one who had been exposed to and had willingly wielded the full, concentrated power of the Infinity Stones, posed a future existential threat to the entire multiverse that far exceeded the danger of the Mad Titan. To understand this, one must dissect Tony Stark's entire character arc, for it reads as a near-perfect blueprint for a potential doom. He is a genius of unparalleled intellect, a master of technology who can revolutionize global energy or create world-ending artificial intelligence with equal ease. More importantly, he is driven by a deep-seated, almost pathological need to control his environment to prevent disaster, a trait born from the trauma of his own creations being used for evil. Recall his unilateral creation of Ultron, an attempt to build a suit of armor around the world, conceived in secret and executed without the consent or knowledge of his allies. This is not the action of a collaborative, democratic hero. It is the impulse of a benevolent dictator, a man who believes he alone can see the chessboard clearly enough to make the necessary moves. His stance in Civil War, where he actively hunts down his former friends and allies in the name of governmental oversight and control, further demonstrates this authoritarian, ends justify the means streak. He is forever the man in the cave, trying to build a missile to escape, only the cave has become the entire universe. Victor Von Doom, in the source comics, is not a cackling, simplistic madman. He is a sovereign, a monarch who rules the nation of Latveria with an iron fist, yet is utterly convinced that his absolute control is the only thing ensuring his people's safety, prosperity, and isolation from a dangerous world. He sees himself not as a villain, but as a necessary, if unappreciated, savior. The parallel to Tony Stark's mindset is unmistakable and deeply unsettling. Both are control-obsessed geniuses, haunted by past failures and driven by a vision of a safe, orderly future that only they can provide. Stephen Strange, having peered beyond the veil of time into millions of potential futures, would have undoubtedly witnessed timelines where Tony survived the conflict with Thanos. He would have seen a Tony forever haunted by the knowledge of the multiverse, deeply traumatized by his losses, and psychologically incapable of relinquishing control. This version of Tony would not simply retire to a quiet domestic life with Pepper and Morgan. He would return to his workshop, more driven, more paranoid, and more powerful than ever before. He would seek to protect Morgan's future not by being a present father, but by becoming an absent god. He would use his genius to impose a permanent, unyielding technological order on reality itself, justifying every tyrannical act, every stripped freedom, as a necessary sacrifice for love and protection. He would, in essence, become Victor Von Doom. The Iron Man would no longer be a hero's title, but a literal description of an unfeeling, dictatorial entity. This terrifying revelation recontextualizes every one of Strange's actions from the moment he emerged from his temporal trance. His grand, theatrical pronouncement on the Q-ship that he would let Tony and Peter die before surrendering the Time Stone, only to immediately and willingly trade the stone for Tony's life moments later on Titan, was not a narrative contradiction or a moment of emotional weakness. It was the first, calculated move in his complex endgame. He needed Tony alive, not because he believed in him as a person, but because he was a necessary component that had to be positioned correctly on the board to reach the one specific checkmate, a checkmate that required the King's sacrifice. Strange's preternaturally calm demeanor during the final, chaotic battle on the ruins of the Avengers compound, and his simple, silent gesture